The slap heard. Across a room of wolves. The first time I saw her, she was sitting at the head of a table that didn't belong to her, and yet everyone acted as if it did. She wore a black tailored suit that fit her like it was stitched directly into her skin, her hair pinned back, her expression calm and lethal. The air in that room felt heavier around her, as if even oxygen understood hierarchy. Her name was Valentina Moretti, though nobody dared say it above a whisper. They said she ruled half the city, and the other half pretended not to know. I wasn't supposed to be there. The invitation was for my boss, who conveniently came down with a sudden illness. In reality, she was terrified. So she sent me instead, a junior public relations officer with a red dress and a mouth that often got her in trouble. I told myself to sit, to observe, to stay invisible. But I've never been good at silence, especially when I hear lies dressed as strategy. The room was a show of money and menace, men in expensive suits, women in diamond armor, and laughter that didn't reach anyone's eyes. I watched quietly until one man started twisting statistics about losses and collateral damage in communities Valentina's operations had touched. His arrogance dripped like oil. Before I could stop myself, I spoke. "You're lying," I said, my voice steady, too steady. "That report's been altered." A hush fell over the table. Forks froze, eyes darted. The man beside her turned slowly, his grin all venom. "Little girls shouldn't play in rooms they don't belong in." Something sharp inside me snapped. I laughed, short, dangerous. "And little men shouldn't speak without permission." He stood. He grabbed my wrist, his fingers tight enough to bruise. Instinct moved faster than thought. My palm met his face in a sound that sliced the air like thunder. Silence. Then movement. Hers. Valentina rose, smooth and deliberate, her chair scraping softly against marble. She looked at the man as if he were already buried, then at me like I was something unexpected. "Get out," she told him, voice quiet, deadly. He obeyed instantly. When the door shut, she turned her gaze back to me. "Name." "Algra Silva." "You have a spine, Algra." "I have a rule," I said, heartbeat hammering in my throat. "Don't touch what you don't respect." A small curve touched her lips. Not a smile, something rarer. "Interesting." She walked toward the exit, stopped and said over her shoulder, "Walk with me." Every sane cell in my body told me to refuse. I followed anyway. We stepped into a narrow corridor lined with gold sconces and secrets. She led me into a lounge of low lights and slow music, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and handed me one. "Who sent you?" "My boss," I said. She was too afraid to face me? Maybe. Or maybe she knew you only bite when challenged. That earned the ghost of another smile. "And why did you challenge him?" "Because people like him believe silence means permission." She studied me for a long moment, then set her glass down. "You're brave." She leaned in slightly, her scent dark and sharp. I like that. I didn't know whether it was a compliment or a warning. Maybe both. That night I went home replaying every second, every look, every unspoken threat disguised as interest. I told myself it was over, that I'd walk into work the next day and pretend it had never happened. But the universe, it seems, enjoys testing fools like me. The next evening, a message arrived. No name, no greeting, just an address and one word typed in bold letters. Come. I told myself not to, but my curiosity has always been louder than my fear, and that's how I found myself once. Again walking toward the woman everyone feared, and the only one who made me forget to be afraid. The Queen's Invitation. Message led me to a penthouse that looked more like a fortress made of glass and shadow. The elevator opened without a button press, as if it already knew my name. When the doors slid apart, she was there. Valentina Moretti standing by the window, the city spread beneath her like an empire she'd painted herself. A glass of whiskey glowed amber in her hand. She turned, her expression unreadable. "You came," she said softly. "I shouldn't have," I answered. "But you did." Her tone wasn't mocking. It was amused, curious, almost approving. "Do you know why?" Maybe curiosity. Maybe something else, she murmured. Sit, I obeyed before realizing I had. The chair was cold leather, the kind that whispered of power and patience. She poured another drink, pushed it across the table toward me. Most people spend their lives trying to earn an invitation like this. You walked in uninvited and still got one. Why? I took a sip. The burn matched her gaze. Maybe you like people who don't fear you. Everyone fears me eventually, she said, walking closer. The question is whether they respect me before that happens. Respect isn't built on fear, I replied. It's built on truth. She stopped in front of me. Truth is expensive. Are you willing to pay for it? Depends on the price. She laughed quietly, then circled behind me, her footsteps soundless. You know, Algra, when you slapped my man, half the room thought I'd have you removed. The other half thought I'd have you killed. And what did you think? I thought you were interesting. Her voice brushed against my ear like silk in danger. No one surprised me in years. I swallowed hard. That doesn't sound safe. It's not supposed to be. When she finally moved back into view, her eyes were softer, thoughtful in a way that made me nervous. Do you know what happens to people who challenge me? I'm guessing they don't get invited to dinner. Sometimes they do, she said, her smile slow and sharp. Once, her words lingered between us like smoke. Then, unexpectedly, she changed the subject. You studied journalism, didn't you? I blinked. How do you... I read people, not resumes. I used to believe stories could change the world, I said, surprising myself with honesty. Then I realized people prefer comfortable lies. And yet you still tell the truth. Someone has to. She nodded once, like a teacher satisfied with an answer. You and I aren't so different. I build empires. You build narratives. Both require control. Control's a polite word for obsession. Her lips curved. Then maybe I'm obsessed with what happens next. For a moment, silence filled the space, heavy and electric. Then she leaned forward, elbows on the table. You're brave, Algra. But bravery without direction is suicide. So let me offer you something better. Purpose. My pulse kicked. What kind of purpose? One that doesn't fit in headlines. She stood, motioning toward the window. Look out there. Every light, every shadow, it all belongs to someone. The trick is to decide who you want to belong to. I don't belong to anyone. Her smile deepened, not cruel, but knowing. Not yet. I turned back to the city, the skyline glowing like a promise and a threat. Why me? I asked finally. Because you didn't flinch. I didn't know I was supposed to. Exactly. She walked past me, brushing her fingers lightly against my shoulder, a touch that felt both casual and deliberate. I'm hosting a dinner tomorrow. Be there at 9, and if I say no, then I'll assume you're smart. Would that disappoint you? Yes. The elevator opened behind me on its own. I should have walked out then. I should have gone home and deleted that message, forgotten her name, her eyes, her voice that could slice marble. But as I stepped inside, she called after me, Algra. I turned. Don't wear red this time, she said. I prefer to be the only one that looks dangerous. The doors closed before I could answer. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face framed by city light, the calm, the fire, the contradiction. I told myself it was curiosity, not attraction. But when dawn came, I already knew I'd go. Some storms you don't run from. You stand in them just to see if you'll still be standing when they're done. Fire tests. What's real? The next night came like a dare. I told myself I was only going for answers, not for her. But when I reached the restaurant, hidden beneath a nameless wine bar, I already knew I was lying to myself. The host led me down a corridor that smelled of oak and secrets. Behind a heavy door, candlelight flickered over velvet walls. And there she was, Valentina Moretti, in a deep crimson dress that could have made silence jealous. She didn't stand when I entered. She didn't need to. Power rarely moves first. You're late, she said, eyes glinting. I didn't say I was coming, and yet here you are. I took a seat opposite her, the table between us feeling more like a test than furniture. curiosity, I said finally. Desire, she corrected softly. They look the same until it's too late. The waiter approached, but she waved him away. You don't order here, she said. You accept what's served, I smiled faintly. Control issues? Experience, she countered. People who try to control chaos usually end up under it. Is that a warning? It's advice. You should take it. The food came. We didn't eat. We talked. About power, about truth, about why people like us couldn't seem to exist quietly. I learned things about her that weren't in rumors. She was precise, almost poetic when she spoke about the city. Every street has a memory, she said. I built half of them. The other half built me. At one point I asked, why me, Valentina? Out of all the people who fear you, why bring me closer? She tilted her head. Because you don't pretend. Everyone else plays a role? You just are. It's inconvenient and refreshing. Her gaze held mine until it hurt to breathe. And maybe, she added, I wanted to see what happens when someone like you walks into my fire instead of running. After dinner, she didn't ask me to stay. She simply stood, walked to me, and brushed a strand of hair from my cheek. You're shaking. I'm not afraid. Then you're smart enough to be terrified, she whispered. Her lips were inches from mine, but she didn't move closer. She let the silence do what words couldn't. I could feel her breath, warm and deliberate, testing my resolve. I should have pulled away. I didn't, she smiled faintly. Go home, Algra. I did, but I didn't leave her behind. That night, every shadow in my apartment felt heavier, like it carried her shape. Every thought led back to her. I told myself it was fascination, not danger. But deep down I knew. Some fires don't burn you immediately. They just change your temperature until you can't remember what cold ever felt like. 3 days later, her car appeared outside my office. Black, silent waiting. A man in a suit handed me a white card. Dinner. 9 p.m. No name. No address. Just coordinates. I didn't hesitate. This time, the meeting wasn't in a restaurant. It was in her world. A marble hall that led to a private suite overlooking the entire skyline. She stood near the window again, her reflection tangled in the city lights. You came, she said, same as before. Maybe I wanted to prove something. To me? To myself. She approached slower this time, like a storm pacing before it strikes. And what did you prove? That I'm not afraid. Her fingers brushed my chin, tilting it upward. Then you're either brave, she whispered, or very stupid. Maybe both. That made her laugh, low, rich, real. Good. I like dangerous women. Her eyes softened. Do you know what happens now? No. Then don't ruin the surprise. She leaned in and kissed me. Not a gentle kiss, not cruel either, but something alive, deliberate, like a secret being claimed. My pulse forgot its rhythm. My thoughts vanished. There was only her, the scent of smoke and salt, the taste of control wrapped in danger. When she finally pulled away, she said quietly, Now you understand. Fire doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it refines. I left before dawn. My heart was still racing, my lips still trembling. I told myself I wouldn't see her again. But deep down, I already knew. I'd step into that fire again, no matter how much it burned. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't want safety. I wanted her. The cost of winning days passed, but her presence followed me like a scent that refused to fade. I woke thinking about her voice. I slept hearing it in the corners of my dreams. Then one afternoon, she appeared again. Unannounced, uninvited, unforgettable. Valentina Moretti stepped into my office like sunlight cutting through storm clouds. My coworkers froze. She didn't even glance at them. Walk with me, she said, her tone leaving no room for discussion. We left the building and slipped into her car. The driver didn't ask where to go. He already knew. The city blurred by. What do you want from me, Valentina? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. I want to know if you understand what you've done, she said. You stood in a room full of predators and didn't look away. Now they see you as mine. I'm not yours, I said softly. She smiled, almost sad. No one stays untouched once they've stood too close to fire. The car stopped at a gated estate outside the city. Massive iron gates opened into silence and marble. She led me through wide corridors filled with art, weapons, and memories. "This is where I keep my truth," she said. In a room lined with screens and maps, she showed me everything: faces of allies, enemies, men who'd once ruled beside her, and others who wanted her gone. One name stood out among them: Dominic Renzetti. "He thinks my empire should belong to him," Valentina explained. "He's wrong. He's also impatient. What will you do?" I asked. She looked at me with something close to amusement. "You'll see." That night she hosted a gathering. The estate transformed into a world of lights and luxury, masks and motives. Renzetti came. Of course he did. He arrived surrounded by men who thought loyalty meant noise. When he saw me beside her, his smirk faltered. "This your new decoration, Valentina?" He sneered. "No," she said. "She's the reason you're still breathing." He chuckled, but it sounded brittle. "She's not one of us. She's a liability." I stepped forward, calm but cold. "If I slap you, it'll be the last thing you ever feel." The crowd fell silent. Valentina didn't stop me. She simply watched, proud, dangerous. Renzetti backed down first. Power had shifted, quietly, completely. Later that night, when the last guest had gone and the silence of the estate returned, she poured us both a drink. "You didn't have to defend me," she said. "I wasn't defending you," I answered. "I was standing with you." Something flickered in her eyes, soft, human. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "People who stand with me tend to fall. Then I'll learn to land on my feet." Her hand brushed mine, and for once she didn't pull away. 3 nights later, the docks burned. 7 hours of fire, smoke, and whispered warnings. Renzetti's empire crumbled before sunrise. I knew it was Valentina's doing, not because she admitted it, but because the next morning, she sat at breakfast with a calm only guiltless victory could bring. But peace doesn't last in her world. That evening, a note slid under my door. No signature. Just 7 words. "She can't protect you forever, little hero." I burned it immediately. I didn't tell her. I didn't want to feed her fury. But she already knew. Over dinner that night, she said, "What did the note say?" My fork froze. "How? You're holding it like a weapon," I sighed. "It said you can't protect me forever." Her lips curved into something sharp. "They're right. I can't. But I can make sure they never get the chance to try." "You're planning something," I said quietly. "I'm always planning something," she replied. "But this time, I'm planning for us." She stood, walked to me, and rested her hand on my cheek. "You think I'm made of steel," she whispered. "I'm not. I'm made of scars, and you keep touching them like they're beautiful." I smiled faintly. "Because they are." For a moment, the world stopped spinning. Outside, the night was loud with distant thunder. Inside, it was just her heartbeat against mine. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, neither of us was running, and that terrified me more than any enemy ever could. The night of fire. The warning signs came quietly, men watching from cars that didn't belong on her streets, phone calls that ended in silence, whispers from allies who suddenly stopped showing up. Valentina pretended she didn't notice, but I saw it in her eyes, that rare flicker of uncertainty that comes before a storm. One night she walked into the study, her gun holstered, her hair loose, and said, "They're moving faster than I thought." "Who?" I asked. "Renzetti's remaining men. And someone worse." "Worse?" She nodded. "Luca Valdez. A ghost from my past. He wants revenge, and he's going to use you to get it." My pulse tightened. "Then let him come." "You don't understand," she said sharply. "He doesn't attack power. He attacks hearts." I stood, crossing the room until we were face to face. Then he picked the wrong target. "I'm not afraid of him." She looked at me like she wanted to believe that, but couldn't. "Fear keeps you alive. Love does too," I whispered. Her jaw clenched, but her eyes softened. "You'll be the death of me, Algra. Then I'll die with you." For a second, she almost smiled. almost. The following days were filled with tension that hummed through the air like electricity before lightning. Plans were made in coded whispers. Weapons were cleaned. Loyal men and women stationed themselves around the estate like ghosts in tailored suits. Valentina didn't leave my side, but she was distant, thinking 3 moves ahead, seeing traps where I only saw walls. Then one morning she said, "We end this. Tonight." We spread false information, a rumor about a shipment of weapons passing through an abandoned tunnel near the river. It was bait, and we both knew Valdez would bite. At sunset, she adjusted my earpiece herself. "If anything happens, you run," she said. "I won't run. You promise me you'll try." I couldn't lie. "No." Her eyes glimmered with both fury and love. "You're impossible. You like that." "I do," she whispered, then kissed me once. Soft, deliberate, final. The trap was set. At twilight, I sat inside a bulletproof car on a narrow bridge, pretending to wait for a convoy that would never come. Valentina and her team were hidden in the dark, watching, waiting. The world felt too quiet, too still. Then headlights appeared at the far end. 1 car, then 2, then 6. "He's here," came Valentina's voice through the earpiece. "Stay calm." "Always am," I replied, though my heartbeat said otherwise. The first explosion tore through the air before I could finish breathing. The car spun sideways. My head hit metal. I smelled smoke and blood. Crawling out, I heard the sound of gunfire echoing like a storm. Valentina shouted something through static, then silence. "Valentina!" I screamed. No answer. I forced myself forward, ducking behind debris, clutching the gun she'd given me weeks earlier. My vision blurred, but I kept moving. Through the smoke, I saw him, Luca Valdez, alive, calm, smiling like a man who believed he'd already won. "So this is the woman who made the queen forget her crown," he said. "She didn't forget it," I said. "She just stopped needing it." He laughed, raising his gun. "She's going to watch you die, and then she'll remember exactly who she is." I steadied my weapon. "No, Luca. She'll remember who you made her become." He fired. I fired. His bullet missed. Mine didn't. But before I could breathe, another shot cracked from the shadows. Luca staggered forward, eyes wide, and fell. Behind him stood Valentina, blood staining her shirt, her arm trembling but steady enough to finish the job. "I told you," she said weakly, her voice shaking. "I wouldn't let him take you." Then she collapsed into my arms. I pressed my hands against her wound, panic clawing at my throat. "Stay with me. Do you hear me? We won. You promised me we'd win." She smiled faintly, blood on her lips. And we did. Her body went limp, but her pulse still fluttered beneath my fingers. We rushed her to a hidden estate owned by one of her allies, a woman named Sophia, who worked silently, saving her life stitch by stitch. Hours later, Sophia came out, wiping her hands. "She'll live," she said. "Barely." The air left my body like I'd been holding it for days. When I was finally allowed to see her, Valentina looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way I'd never imagined. I sat beside her bed, holding her hand, whispering, "You're not allowed to die. Not after everything. Not after me." Her eyes fluttered open just enough for a whisper. "Still brave?" "Only because you taught me," she smiled, weak but alive. "Good. I'd hate to have to haunt you." I laughed through tears I didn't know I was crying. For days, I didn't leave her side. I fed her soup she barely tasted, read to her from books she claimed to hate, and slept in the chair beside her until Sophia told me I'd collapse before she did. And when Valentina finally stood again, leaning on my shoulder, she said the words I never expected to hear. "I'm done running from ghosts." Then she kissed me. Slow, certain, alive. The war was over, but as we walked out of that house together, hand in hand, I knew something deeper had changed. The Mafia Queen had survived her fire, and so had I. Queens don't run. They rebuild. Spring arrived like a truce. The city that once trembled beneath Valentina Moretti's name now spoke it with respect, even admiration. Her empire didn't crumble. It transformed. The woman who had built her throne on fear was learning how to rule with trust. And somehow, impossibly, I was part of that transformation. We returned to her estate after weeks in hiding. The marble floors had been scrubbed clean of blood, the shattered glass replaced, but some scars remained, on the walls, on her body, and on both our hearts. The guards greeted her with nods instead of bowed heads, and when their eyes met mine, they didn't look through me anymore. They looked to me. That night, Valentina stood in the garden, the same one where we had first learned what it meant to be still together. The air smelled of rain and renewal. "It's strange," she said quietly. "For years, I thought survival was the same thing as living. But now that I've survived everything, I'm realizing I never really lived at all." I joined her, taking her hand. "Then let's live now." She squeezed my fingers. "Do you know what living costs someone like me?" "Everything," I said. "But it's worth it." A small, rare smile curved her lips. "I almost believe you." Days turned into weeks, and something shifted inside the house. The war room turned into a planning space for rebuilding, businesses that helped rather than hurt, partnerships built on loyalty rather than fear. Her people didn't just follow her anymore, they believed in her. And as for me, I found a new role beside her, not as decoration or distraction, but as her equal. One afternoon, I walked into her office and found her staring at the giant map on the wall, the same map that used to mark her enemies. Half the red pins were gone now, replaced with green. "You're changing the city," I said. "I'm changing myself," she corrected. "The city's just keeping up." I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around her waist. "And what happens when you're done rebuilding?" "Then," she said, turning in my arms, "we start something that doesn't need to be rebuilt ever again." Her voice trembled. Not from fear, but from the weight of wanting something new, something fragile, peace. Later that week, she took me to a part of the estate I had never seen. The corridor smelled of dust and memory. At the end stood a locked door. "This," she said, unlocking it, "was supposed to be my mother's sanctuary." She never finished it. I couldn't bring myself to. The room inside was empty, sunlight spilling across cracked floors and blank walls. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because I want you to finish it with me," she said. "Make it ours," I laughed softly. "You're serious? I don't joke about the future anymore." So we did. We spent days transforming the old room into something alive. Walls painted ivory, shelves filled with books, windows dressed with silk that danced when the wind passed through. She insisted on building a small library. I insisted on placing flowers on the piano she hadn't touched in years. Slowly, the house began to feel less like a fortress and more like a home. One evening, as the sun bled gold through the windows, Valentina stood by the piano and said, "Do you know what the worst thing about power is? It teaches you to expect betrayal. But you stayed." "I wasn't staying for your empire," I said. "I stayed for the woman who built it." She looked at me for a long moment, eyes shining like she was seeing something for the first time. "Then maybe," she whispered, "I can finally start believing in forever." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black box. My breath caught. "Don't look at me like that," she said with a nervous laugh I'd never heard before. "It's not a proposal." "Not exactly. Then what is it?" "A promise." Inside the box was a simple silver band, smooth and unadorned, with words engraved inside. Fire and the woman who didn't run from it, Valentina. "Say yes," she said softly. "Not to me. To us." I didn't speak. I just kissed her. Slow, deep, real. That night, we danced barefoot in the garden under soft lights and quieter skies. There was no music, just the sound of her heartbeat against mine and the rhythm of the world finally learning peace. Weeks passed. The city healed, so did we. The papers wrote headlines about the new Moretti dynasty, one that used influence for reform, not fear. But they didn't know the truth. The dynasty wasn't new. It was reborn. And every night before she turned off the lights, Valentina would look at me and whisper, "You know, I used to think love was weakness. And now?" I'd ask, "Now I know it's armor." Sometimes, when I woke in the quiet hours before dawn, I'd find her standing by the window again, staring out at the city she once owned by force and now ruled by respect. Her scars caught the light like silver, and in that moment, she didn't look like the Mafia Queen the world feared. She looked human, strong, flawed, alive. "Do you miss it?" I asked her once. "The old life?" She turned to me, smiling faintly. "Not for a second. Queens don't run, Algra. They rebuild." And that was the truth of her. The woman who rose from blood and ashes, who learned that power without compassion is emptiness, and that love, real love, doesn't make you soft. It makes you unstoppable. That night, as the first stars appeared above the garden, I whispered the words that had been waiting in my chest since the day I met her. "I never knew where home was until you." She kissed me, slow and sure. "Then stay. The fire's gone, and the world finally feels warm again." And for once, I believed her. Moral. Never mistake gentleness for weakness or silence for surrender. The strongest hearts are those that have burned and still choose to build again.